this is Selena Kraus and welcome to another card video. This video is part of a collaboration hub between Scrappy Crafts and Pearblossom Press. So let's get started. I'll be using few of the new products from the new release. Forest Tree cover die, Fairy Silhouettes, Fairy Sentiments, and Starry Night stencil set. I'll be using just that one layer, and there are two more layers with the moon that come in the set, but I'll just put those aside and use just one of them. Also, we'll be using the Easy Lights from Pearblossom Press. There are two types. There are the halo lights and they're individual lights with three little LEDs. So I've already pre-die cut 3 layers of the forest tree cover die and 3 layers of the fairy silhouettes that we'll be using. So I'll put everything aside and we're gonna start here. I have 3 layers because I like to stack my die cuts to have more sturdy element for my card and kind of gives more dimension and more interest. So what I'm doing here, I'm applying some liquid glue and I'll adhere all those layers together. You can either use liquid glue with precision tip or you can use spray glue. I prefer liquid glue. And this glue also dries clear, so if you see any white coming off the sides from the die cuts, don't worry about that. Once it dries, it will be clear, and when we put it on the card, it won't be visible at all. I'm making sure that everything is aligned here. Just adding a little more adhesive. So I'm adding another layer of adhesive. Not another layer, but on top of this die cut, I'm adding more adhesive for the third to adhere that third and last layer of our cover die cut. I'm making sure that all the intricate parts have adhesive on them so they're not, they can stick together and they're not catching onto anything once you grab your card or when you try to put it in the mail. I would suggest that you don't use A2 envelope for this kind of cards. You use either bubble wrap, bubble mailer, or a little box. So we're gonna do the same thing for the fairy silhouettes. I'm just removing the extra pieces from the intricate wings. And again, we're applying glue on the back of the die cuts and stacking them up. Once I adhere my die cuts, I like to put something heavy. Here you see that my Misty tool is on top of that cover die, and I'll be doing like acrylic block on top of the fairies. This ensures that the die cuts dry flat once that glue is set. So we're adding the third layer here. Okay, I think that looks good. I'll put those aside so we can move on to the next step. So now we're going to create our background. I'm using some reactive inks and ink blending brush. I'll do a combination of purples, pinks, and oranges to create kind of sunset scene. So I'm starting with the darkest purple. Next I'll be moving to more like kind of berry, which is between purple and pink. I'm kind of blending the layer from before the darkest ink so we have smooth transition between the colors. Okay, next we'll go with the Taffy, which is more like kind of red pink. Again, I'm blending between the colors. And then the last one is the orange, and I'm using the Creamsicle Reactive ink. Again, blending between the layers there. Okay, so I think that this looks good. So now let's move creating our starry kind of sky. So now since this is reactive ink, I'm splashing some water to create some more interest. I think that looks good. Next, I'm grabbing some white acrylic paint, and I'll create more kind of splatters using the the white acrylic paint. I'm adding some water to dilute it a little bit so it's easier to flick. There I got a big blob, but don't worry, I'll just dab it out with a towel. And once we have everything ready, it won't be even noticeable. So to speed up the process, I decided to use my heat tool on the first setting to just dry that paint so we can move on to the next step. I'm just also drying on the back so our panel doesn't warp. Then on the front, so this allows the panel to stay flat. So now I'll secure the Starry Night stencil on top of my panel, and I'll use metallic kind of white ink to add some stars onto the background. So I'm just moving quickly from the top to the bottom and adding that. This is like kind of colorless, but it just adds shine and more interest to our background. It looks pretty neat. So you can see the little stars there, and now I want it more bright white stars. So I'm adding using white gel pen from Pearblossom Press to add white stars. So I'm adding those randomly wherever. So let's see. I think this looks pretty good. Now I'm using my pencil to mark where I want those lights to go. So since one set comes with 3 lights, I decided to add 3 dots there, and I used my piercing tool to make holes so we can thread those lights to the front. You can also add them to the back, but I wanted more bright light to come from those branches, and then the one behind the fairies will go between their arms so it won't be really visible. So now let's adhere that cover panel to our background. And then we're gonna do the lights. So I'm lining that up, pressing it down, and I'll add again something heavy on top and let that set for a little bit. While that's setting, I will stamp my sentiment from Fairy Sentiments set. I will stamp on black cardstock since our die cuts are black and emboss the sentiments in white. So I'm positioning those in my MISTI. It doesn't really matter how they're positioned since we're gonna die cut those out. I'm stamping a couple times with my Versamark ink to have nice coverage. And pouring some detailed white embossing powder. Okay, now we're gonna make sure that that heat tool is nice and hot before we heat set that. Okay, so that's done. I'm using some Swiffer cloth to get rid of the extra anti-static powder. I'm securing my coordinating dies on top, and then I have one strip die that was in my stash and it worked perfectly for the fellow year part of the sentiment. So by magic of YouTube, I've already die cut those. Okay, now let's assemble our card. So I think that looks pretty neat. So now what I'm doing, I'm threading those lights through the holes we made there. If they don't fit, just use your piercing tool and kind of widen those holes for the lights to thread to the front. We have 2 and the third one. Okay, so I think that looks good. That one came out, so I'm just putting it back. Now before we move to securing everything, I'll just stamp one little stamp. This is from my favorite things, but you can purchase it at Pearblossom Press. It's perfect for interactive cards, and it just says push, which means the recipients should push there to light up the card. So on the back of that push sentiment, we're gonna put that push button from with the battery pack. As you can see, it's right there. Now I will secure everything with just clear tape. Secure that battery pack. Now I'm securing all the lights, all the wires there. Just making it nice and flat. Okay, that looks pretty good. Just gonna trim off this end there. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, now let's assemble our card. I'm using foam tape. I'm doubling it up. And then I'll just cut strips and apply around that battery pack to make sure that it's nice and secure and doesn't move from there. And then I'll cover the entire back using that double stacked foam tape. So we have everything covered, and on top of that battery pack I will add double-sided sticky tape. Okay, we're gonna remove the backing and we're gonna put another panel that's A2 on top of that. This will enclose our lights inside the card, and they have nowhere to go. They'll be there for good. Okay, now let's just adhere our elements, and then we're just gonna adhere the entire panel to a top folding note card. I'm using black foam adhesive squares here, since our cardstock with the sentiment is black, and also the die cuts are made out of black cardstock. I'm just adding some liquid adhesive on the sides. Okay, I think that's good. We're just gonna adhere the fairies now. Just adding again foam adhesive on the back. Okay, we're done here. One thing left to do is just adhere it onto a top folding note card, and we're done. So thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to check the details, visit my blog post for this hop because there are giveaways. And also don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and visit my blog in general for more ideas and more inspiration. Thanks for watching. Bye!